What is up, Hockey Nation? Welcome to our inaugural show of Flyer and Ice, brought to you by Heat Ratio Sports. Tonight, we drop the puck on all things hockey, from the Flyers to the NHL to DFS to props. My name is Dan Green, and I have been a lifelong hockey fan. I hate to date myself, but I go back to when the Flyers were going for the hat trick in '76. They lost to the Canadiens that year, but that's how far back I go. I remember the same year they played the Russians and beat them 4-1. It was a great year for getting started in the hockey. I could go on and on. Anyway, with me tonight is my beyond knowledgeable 4for4 partner, Vance Crew. Vance, what is going on, buddy?
Dan, not too much, my man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, anytime. Vance, you want to give us a little background about when your hockey passion started?
Yeah, it started probably early 90s. Back in the day, happened to be changing the channels and turned on a Flyers game back when they had Keith Acton, Kevin Dineen, Rob Brindamore, and I've been a fan ever since.
You know, I have to give you credit because those are bad years of hockey for the Flyers. That was pre-Lindros, post Poulin and Tocchet. Those were some bad years. So God bless for sticking with it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is all I know. So here we are.
Right. Stay provincial to your town. All right. Let's get started. Now, last year, whole new coaching staff, 3 great coaches. One, obviously, our new head coach, Elaine Vigneault, Mike Yeo, Michael Terrion, the assistant coaches. Great hires by the organization. Coming off of what seemed like year after year of disappointment, mediocre hockey. And at times last year, Vance, I thought they were even going in that direction. You had to realize they were getting used to a system. And then that stretch pre-COVID where they were just on fire and taking the league by storm, climbing up the ladder points. And then the whole COVID stuff happened and they lost their mojo. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I actually thought they were contenders. That's how hot they were. And then COVID happened. And then wouldn't you know it, the bubble started. And I'm thinking they're in a bubble with Washington, Boston, and Tampa Bay. Yeah, good luck with that. They swept every game. The mojo continued. I was like in awe. They open up, have a solid series against Montreal. Showed a few warts in that series. The speed of Montreal was giving them trouble at times. And then, unfortunately, the wheels fell off with the Islanders, exposing some things. You know, some of my concerns that we'll discuss later. But that's how last year went. So, Vance, what do you think this year is going to look like? And what do you feel is the strength of this team? And then I'll give you my response.
Right. So the strength of the team, I think, as you said before, you know, we've talked about before offline, Alain Vigneault is a great coach. That's number one. I also think Carter Hart, you know, a year older, will be in conversation for the Vezina Trophy this year. I'm expecting really big things from him. Also, I think the young forward group, I think Konechny, Farabee, you know, maybe a guy like Frost steps up this year. I'm looking forward to that. And also the young defenseman, I think Provorov takes another big step this year, as well as Myers. Myers is filling in big shoes for Niskanen retiring. And also Sanheim. I expect a lot from Sanheim as well this year. So I think, you know, in all, they're a very well-rounded team. And to be honest, my personal opinion is outside of Tampa Bay, you know, Tampa Bay is the one team that I could look at and say that they're better than the Flyers. Everybody else, I think the Flyers can compete or even better than them.
No, I agree with that. Tampa Bay definitely is head and shoulders right now. But, you know, injury or two to that squad, and then it opens the door for other teams.
Right.
You mentioned Provorov, and could you think of a guy that doesn't get the respect that he deserves as Ivan Provorov? I mean, he scores 13 to 16 goals a year, 13 last year, I believe, in a shortened year, plays 25 minutes a game, is a rock, not even a sniff for the All-Star game, not even in anyone's top 20 ranking as defenseman in the league. I can't get over that. I mean, obviously, you probably are in agreement with me on that.
I agree. You know, I do think Provorov, I think he's not the flashy defenseman that everybody looks for. And I think that's the thing about him. He's not a Carlson. He's not a Burns or anything like that. He's just a steady defenseman. He's a rock back there. He gets things done. And I think, you know, outside of Philadelphia, fans don't appreciate him, or the league doesn't really appreciate him enough.
No, I agree. I think the Pierre Maguire types do, but he'll get his name out there. I mean, like you said, I think this is the year where he steps up. Now, for me, I'm pretty much in concordance with you. I think their coaching staff is what makes this team exciting for me, and our young goaltender, Vezina candidate, as you said. Another thing to consider: 2 years ago, their special teams were horrid. Horrid. They were like bottom in the league in both kill and power play. Last year, their power play was solid, and their penalty kill finished 11th overall, a solid 82%. Now they stumbled in the playoffs with the power play, so that needs to be fine tuned a bit. But you said it. This team is well balanced, and I like the direction they're headed.
Right. So
Now,
about the
go
power
ahead,
play, I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
please.
One of the knocks on Provorov is I don't think he's not a quarterback on the power play. I don't really think he's a quarterback on the power play. And if Ghost is going to be part of the team this year, I'd much rather have him on that first unit that they had a few years ago, where they had maybe Voracek and Gostis Bear at the point on the first unit of the power play. Maybe Provorov could bump down to the second unit. He has a good shot, but he's not a puck mover, not the elite puck mover that you want on your first power play unit as a defenseman.
No, you're so right, and that it just goes to show you how one cog has issues, then it trickles down.
Right.
Ghost needs to have an impact on his team. He needs to be healthy, and he needs to be that power play specialist, because that's essentially what he is. He is a liability defensively, but he's a stud offensively. And to your point, real fast, to your point, I think Travis Sanheim could be that second power play unit guy as well. He's a solid offensive defenseman.
Yeah, I agree. Sanheim does a lot. He's great with the puck. He is a solid offensive defenseman, or maybe a guy like Gustafsson. I know he had a big year in Chicago a couple of years ago, predominantly working out of their power play. So that might be another option as well.
Yeah, and my listen, our young defenseman, I'm in love with our young defenseman. Myers, to me, is a stud. We've got depth at that position. So yeah, we definitely have great potential with our defensive pairings. But again, back to what you said, power play, it begins with Ghost back there. He's got to be the man. All right. So I'm going to do a little, I'm going to name a player, and I would like for you to project the stats of that player. Now,
okay.
I want to show you my mad math skills. This is a 56 game season, which is 68% of a normal season. So if you think a 30 goal scorer is a good year, then 20 goals would be the equivalent based on a 68% season. I'm doing you a favor. So think it's 20 goals as a 30 goal scorer and 27 as a 40 goal scorer based on a 68% season. All right. Now that I got the chalkboard stuff out of the way, let's start with the captain. Is Claude Giroux going to have a solid year this year, Vance?
I think G is always going to have an impact. He's become over his career a solid two-way player. Especially as he's gotten older, he's gotten more responsible defensively. If you want to know what his stats are going to be, is that what you're asking me?
I mean, I don't want to pin you down to an exact total, but is he gonna have one of those years where, let's say it was an 82 game schedule? Is he gonna have his 25 goal year? Is he gonna have like a 14 goal year and be stagnant that way?
I think we're looking at the lower end of the two. And honestly, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think he's getting a little bit older. And at this point, you need a guy like Konechny to maybe step up and take some of that, pressure away from Giroux and just allow him to become that second line type of player.
All right. You just segued right into my next player. How's Travis Konechny going to do this year?
I think there's big things on the horizon from Travis Konechny. I can easily see a 21, 22 goal season this year. I think he has a lot to prove after that playoff series last year against the Islanders, where he didn't score a goal. I think he's very motivated to come back and do big things. So I expect a big year from him.
I obviously was disappointed in his play, but I guarantee you he was injured. I guarantee you there was something that was ailing that young man, because he had a precipitous drop from his regular season, and that time of year everyone's hurt. So I'm not going to hold that against him, but I do think he will bounce back big time.
I
But
agree.
you are correct. My favorite player on the team, not just because he's new, I just love the guy's personality. You can tell that when Kevin Hayes joins a team, he galvanizes a locker room. That's the kind of player I think he is. So give me your feelings on Kevin Hayes and his potential numbers this year.
I think again, Kevin Hayes is another guy. I think he's been here. This will be his second year, more comfortable. Stepped in right away last year and became a leader, and I expect to see a lot more of that. Solid two-way player, heart and soul kind of guy. I think he's
Absolutely.
gonna, yeah, I think he's gonna have another great season this year. As far as points, a guy like Kevin Hayes, I don't really judge him by points as much as you might judge some other guys, but the guy makes big plays. I mean, I can think of quite a few games last year where he made the play of the game, whether it was a big goal, a big hit, or he made a play on defense to save the game. So, again,
Sure-handed. Yeah.
I think he's going to have another great year.
No, I agree. And it's funny. I made a note. We kind of had this mindset that Drew kind of had an off year, and Hayes actually had 12 less points, and it was actually a -7, and Drew was a +6. Crazy, right? But yeah, we just felt Hayes had such amazing impact because of the intangible things that you just referenced. He's an expert faceoff man, just like Giroux. He's phenomenal in a power play, and he's the one guy. And tell me if I'm wrong, that truly can enter the zone with great stick handling ability. Whereas the others are even the guys with speed like Konechny and Voracek, they're still dumping and chasing. Whereas Hayes can enter the zone on his own. So
Agree.
that's one thing I like with him a lot as well.
Yeah, I agree. He has, like I said, he has offensive skill. And like you said, he is the best, forward they have at entering the zone, with the puck, especially as a center. Much better than, Couturier in that aspect.
Right. And there's another heart and soul guy, Couturier. I can't go over the whole roster, but there's a couple other guys I want to touch on. Not from the perspective of you just know Couturier is going to do his thing. Voracek, he's still a heart and soul player. He might, he's one of those guys that could go from 12 goals to 20 goals, and he'll
Right.
always get his assists. But a guy that honestly I think was a mistake signing was JVR, James Van Riemsdyk. Is he going to bounce back, or is he what he is?
No, I think he'll bounce back. One thing about Van Riemsdyk is he's always been able to score goals. I think the thing about Van Riemsdyk is you have to put him around players that can get him the puck. When you bury him on the fourth line, I think at some point last year he was on the fourth line. He's not going to get as many chances, playing on the fourth line as he would as on the first, second, or third. So I think that he does bounce back. I also think that this might be his last year due to the expansion draft coming up. So I think he's motivated to have a great season as well.
And another player, no, I'm hoping you're right. And another player that we all need to see what's happening. I guess he is in theory in his third year, but he's fourth year with the Flyers. Nolan Patrick. He had the year-long migraine issue last year. I'm almost leaning towards it had to be some kind of concussion issue. Thoughts on him? Is he going to just be slow and steady, have flashes, or is he going to take that next step?
That's a tough call. I'm not really sure what to think about Nolan Patrick at this point. I think he has great talent. He's had these concussions or these migraines dating back to his time in juniors, I believe.
Yeah.
But I think he has great talent and he's shown flashes. I think he's in a really tough position this year with it being a 52, 56 game season. I think that they're going to probably have to monitor how much he plays. They're playing a lot of back-to-backs this year, so he's probably going to have to, sit out quite a few games. But, we haven't seen him play in over, is it 2 years now?
Yeah. He missed the entirety of last year, and he had plenty of injuries the year before. Not necessarily head related, but he missed quite a few games the year before. He's an anomaly right now,
Right. Anything at this point that he gives us is a bonus.
or an enigma, I should say.
He's the wild card at this
Yeah.
point because he's the one player that you know that he has great talent and you've seen flashes, he could come in this season and have a great year, or who knows, with the migraines, he may not play at all. But and where does he fit? Is he your third? Is he your third line center when he comes back? Or
Yeah, I believe he is. I'm assuming it's going to be a combination of Couturier, Giroux up front. One of those two will be the center. Hayes will center your second line, and probably Patrick your third, and Lawton the fourth.
right?
Think we have certain locks on our team, and that kind of brings me to my. Well, actually, before I get to my next little segment, you touched on the defenseman brilliantly when we kind of touched on the power play. Anything else you'd like to add with the pairings of the defensemen?
Not at the moment. I think Mark Friedman, from what I understand, he looks really good in camp. Heard good things, a lot of good things about him over the past few years. It seems like he might have a chance to crack that rotation at some point.
No, it's funny you mention that because I've had arguments with hockey guys, and I'm a hockey guy,
Right.
and I'm probably wrong. And please tell me you can disagree with me, and I won't be offended. I have a philosophy when a team is not necessarily going anywhere, and this is kind of hypocritical because we do think the Flyers are going somewhere, but at the same time, Provorov's no kid anymore. Ghost is not a kid anymore. Haig is not a kid anymore. They've been around 3-4 years now. And in hockey, you're mid-20s, you're a veteran, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I kind of get frustrated when a team force feeds that we have to have a veteran defenseman on the team. And I'm not a fan of Braun. And Zumala or Friedman, if they legitimately earned a spot on this team and it forces Braun to be the odd man out, I want them to make him the odd man out. Where do you stand on having to have that veteran presence on the blue line?
I somewhat agree with what you're saying. I think, Provorov at this point, as you said, he is a seasoned vet. I think what did he come to us when he was 19?
Yeah.
Right. And he's about 23, 24 now. This is Myers is what? He's been in the league 2.5 years, right?
Yep.
Sanheim is this 3 years for him now, I believe it is.
Yeah.
You
mentioned Gustafsson already.
Right. I think Provorov is the real key. I mean, I think that's your leader defensively. I also think that, although we talked about Ghost and Ghost's importance on the power play, I do think that he at some point could potentially be the odd man out, depending on, I think he has the shortest leash of all of the defensemen. And that's
you're spot on. You've seen games. I'm trying to think. He's like the linebacker that's just out of position all the time.
Right.
In football, he's just, and he's weak on the puck. He gets brutalized in the corners. He's got to destroy it on the offensive end where they almost have to keep him in the lineup. Exactly. And then he's just got to be smarter on defense.
Right. That's where his value is. His value is on the offensive end. If he's not, providing any value on the offensive end, then I can easily see some point during the season, maybe Friedman coming up and taking that spot for good.
Yeah, I'm a big Friedman guy. The kid's got a lot of grit for a kid who's like 5'11". So yeah, great calls on the defensive side of the blue line there. Now, it's all about the goaltending. We saw in my opinion, mediocre Dallas team get to the Stanley Cup Finals with Khudobin standing on his head. I hate that expression, but if anyone stood on his head, it was that guy. I haven't seen a playoff series in my entire 40-plus years of watching hockey where a team dominated a series so thoroughly yet lost in 5 games like the Vegas Knights did last year. They dominated Dallas. They had like 20 shots more per game than Dallas, and they lost in 5 games because of a goalie that was sick. And he almost took Tampa Bay to the brink.
Mm-hmm.
We need Carter Hart to be that guy. What do you think he needs to do as far as goals against, save percentage? What does he need to do to help this team get to the next level?
To be honest, I think Carter Hart is going to be stellar. As far as save percentage and goals against, I'm not exactly sure. I think that 2.5 goals a game, might be about where he ends up in that 925 to 993 percentage save range. My question with the goaltending is it's more so with Elliott. because you got to figure, 52 or 56 game season, they're playing all these back-to-back games. Elliott's going to play a lot. So I think Carter Hart is going to be great. And Elliott was great last year, but can you count on Elliott again this year to play a decent amount of games and really come through for you? Because this is a sprint at the end of the day. It's, by the time we look up, the regular season is going to be over. And there's going to be a really good team that gets left out of the playoffs. So, the backup goaltender to me this year is probably just as important as the starting goaltender.
That's a brilliant point. And the only thing I would say with that is, in trying to feel confidence with what you said, is Elliott's a consummate professional.
Right.
He's not a diva. He knows what his role is. He's a phenomenal mentor for Hart. And I think when teams have the backup goalie in there, it's almost like the backup quarterback in football. The team steps up for the backup because they know they got to play that much harder. So I'm comfortable with Elliott. But yeah, I do agree. He's probably going to have to play 10 to 15 games because they're going to be playing a lot of back-to-back games. The one good thing, and I say this in jest, how many years do the Flyers start off on a West Coast trip? And for crying out loud, they started off in Czechoslovakia last year. Right. So, with this new divisional play, at least they're going to be localized and travel. They might play back-to-backs, but the travel is not going to be a burden like it's been in the past. But yeah, Elliott's going to have to play a lot of hockey. So I agree with that point.
Now, question for you, Dan. How many games do you think Hart will start this year?
56 game schedule. I would say at least 40.
And Elliott gets the other 16 games.
I mean, would you agree that's a fair number? Or am I?
I wonder, man, with a lot of these back-to-back games, I wonder if 40 might be a little bit too much. I wonder if maybe 37, even though that doesn't sound like much of a difference, 36, 37 might be more like the number.
Yeah, and that could be fine too. And it's a lot of it could be the economy of the game he played too, right? If they played a game where they allowed 15 shots, maybe you can then play them on consecutive nights. And this is a four teams make the playoff scenario. You might not have the luxury to say we got to rest him tonight and play Elliott. We're X amount of points out of the fourth playoff spot. We got to ride our horse here. So, give us a fast start, a cushion, and then you could even alternate them as far as I'm concerned. Excuse me. But it really depends on the start they have, and they had been a slow starting team in the past, and they covered up for that with that torrid pace they had before the COVID break. But yeah, it'll be interesting, and that's a scenario where the teams that do the goalie by committee will have an advantage over the teams that like to ride a goalie, like the Brodeur years and the Patrick Waugh years of yesteryear, where those guys would barely get a rest.
70
so
games
it'll be interesting. You're right. It'll be interesting. But so maybe I'll curb my number down to 35. You talk me into it.
35 might be too low, but I'm thinking maybe somewhere within that 36 to 38, 39 range.
Yeah,
sounds about right.
If it's 35, it means they had a nice cushion and they could put Elliott in the game. And again, Elliott's not chopped liver. I mean, he's a solid goalie. But again, Carter Hart's our future. Now, as you also know, Vance, that the NHL is allowing teams to carry extra players, kind of almost like the extra practice squad scenario that the NFL is doing. So I'm gonna read you a list of names, and you just tell me if any jump out at you as someone that could maybe steal a spot at a camp, or early in the season get a quick call up from the Phantoms if they're just doing well, and there's someone that you might think that made the team has to keep it up, or they might get sent down. Maybe like a Nico Kubel doesn't have a great start, and he loses a spot. So you mentioned Morgan Frost. They've got the Sam Moran project. The big former defenseman now is going to try to be the rugged winger because of the division we're in. Connor Bunnaman, Linus Sandin, Carson Tornansky, Tanner Lazinski. You got Tornansky, Lazinski, Wade Allison, Mark Friedman, and Igor Zumalev that we mentioned. Any of them potential guys? I know I'm a Frost guy too. And anyone like Frost or maybe someone else that you think can really put their stamp on this team and play a significant amount of games at the NHL level?
Out of that group, I'm probably going to say Bunneman, just because I saw him a little bit last year and I like the style of game that he plays. And Sandin, they went out and signed him as a free agent this year from overseas, right?
Yes.
And he is
he's a mid-20s guy, so he's not a kid.
Right. So he's a seasoned vet, although he hasn't played in the NHL. He's a guy that I can see stepping in and maybe, Vigneault trusting him a little bit more than he does with some of the younger guys.
No, you're right. I would really like to see Frost take that next step. I mean, my biggest thing with the Flyers, guys that just don't have hands. Now, that sounds ridiculous. A Stanley Cup contender, a bona fide playoff team, how can they not have guys with hands? I don't think they have guys with hands. They don't address people. When they get pressured on the power play, they give up the puck. They lose shootouts because they don't have guys that do nifty moves. Frost has that potential to be that guy that I envision having hands.
Agreed. I think Frost has a lot of skill. I remember watching him at the World Juniors a few years ago and really being impressed with his skill set.
Yeah, he was terrific there.
The thing about Frost is I kind of think a lot of his playing time might be tied into how much Nolan Patrick plays. To be honest, I think he's a potential answer at 3C, depending on how much Nolan Patrick plays. Maybe, again, if they want to watch Patrick's health, maybe Patrick plays some games as 3C and maybe Frost plays some games as 3C as well.
No, that's a terrific point. And with this condensed schedule, there's going to be injuries. And when does Michael Raffl not get hurt for a long stretch of games, right? So, and that's Bunneman is a Raffl kind of replacement. Morgan Frost doesn't replace a Raffl. So I think you nailed it. Because it's funny when a guy doesn't make the team, but when they get called up and they're automatically a second line player, third line player, it shows you they have skill. You can't bring up Frost and put him on the fourth line. You just can't do it.
You can't.
So yeah, that's why it's almost more valuable to play him in the minors versus sticking him on a fourth line at the NHL level. So interesting points right there. Now, we touched on players that we projected production already. Is there a player that you're worried about that could have a disappointing year that might take a total step backwards?
When it comes down to those two guys that we mentioned earlier, Ghost and JVR, those are two prime candidates for me. Like, Ghost, we really don't know what we're going to get from him. We've seen him at his highest. We've seen him at his lowest. I'd take him somewhere in the middle, even if we could get that. And, JVR, I worry about him playing, down in the lineup. But again, this team has three lines that can score goals. I mean, if you put a healthy Nolan Patrick on the third line with JVR, that might be enough to, rejuvenate him. So, but we just don't know. Those are the two guys that I question the most out of the starting lineup.
Right. And it's almost like it wouldn't even be a disappointment. It would be like, unfortunately, they played the way they did last year type of thing.
Right.
But I'm hoping they step it up. As I alluded to earlier, this year hockey, because of the whole COVID and in particular because of the laws in Canada about them having to stay on their side of the border, there's going to be 4 divisions in hockey, and only 4 teams within that division will make the playoffs. And in my opinion, the division the Flyers are in, the East, is the hardest division of the bunch.
Agreed.
So I'll start with the East. You have Boston, Buffalo, New Jersey, the New Jersey Devils, New York Islanders, New York Rangers, our Flyers, the Penguins, the Capitals. Now, just to make this somewhat easier, maybe you'll be in agreement with me, I'm going to knock Buffalo and New Jersey right out of the equation. Buffalo's a young team with some talent. They probably had the best free agent signing in the offseason in Taylor Hall. but they're still not there yet, in my opinion. And New Jersey, I don't think they're in the mix either. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
I do agree with that. I do.
All right. So with this monster division, what four get out?
This is pretty, to be honest, man, this is pretty tough when I look at this list. Because you can make one really good team is going to get left out.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, the team that's probably going to be on the outside looking in might end up being the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I kind of struggle with that. I go back and forth about that because they still have Crosby and Malkin. But I just think, at this point, I think the Flyers, I think Boston. Boston's another team to watch too. Boston has some great players, but they also lost Torrey Krug and they lost to Daniel Chara. Those are big losses for Boston.
Correct.
But I think ultimately they make it. So my list is I have Boston, I have the Flyers, the Caps, and the Islanders making it out.
You know what? It's almost it's uncanny. I have the same exact thing. I couldn't decide between the Capitals or the Rangers, to be honest with you. I think the Rangers are a scary team. They're that team that I have the Penguins missing it too, but the Rangers scare me. They have. I mentioned how Buffalo is not quite there yet. Well, the Rangers are not quite there yet, but they're there yet. If that makes sense, they have a combination of things.
It makes a lot.
And they had a great draft because of a lot of it with the lottery and the luck. But that's a scary team. So if the Rangers come out strong, I mean, the Flyers could be a team on the bubble.
Right.
They're not, and I can't put the Flyers over the Islanders the way the Islanders owned us in the playoffs. And you mentioned Boston and the Capitals. I mean, they're a machine. So, but we have the same teams coming out of the East, but the Rangers scare me. They scare me big time.
Scare me too. I mean, you've got Panarin, you've got Zibanejad, you've got Lafreniere. That's a pretty potent lineup.
Yeah, I'm hoping Lafreniere turns out to be Hughes for the Devils. doesn't live up to expectations, but I think he will be legit. Now I'll start with the North. All right, the North is your Canadian teams: Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver. The four that I have going in, I think Montreal is building something. They have, the Flying Frenchman is their persona, and they are a fast team. I think Toronto is stacked. I think Edmonton and Calgary are damn good teams. Now, the equivalent of the Rangers in that division would be the Winnipeg Jets for me. So where do you stand with the North?
So let's see. So I like the way that Montreal came on at the end of the year. Looks like Suzuki and Kakiniemi have star potential, so I like them. Toronto, I like them as well. Austin Matthews is a great player. The Vancouver Canucks, I like them as well. And out of the last three teams, I think I will go with Calgary, the Calgary Flames.
All right. So who are your four that are definitely getting out of there, in your opinion?
So I've got Montreal, Toronto. Did I say Vancouver?
Yeah, and Calgary, you said?
Yep.
So you're leaving out Connor McDavid and Draisaitl.
You know what? That team, I mean, they always seem to do a lot of scoring. They don't defend very well.
No, you're right. And wasn't it there a stretch, I don't know, 10 years ago where it seemed like 5 straight years they had the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and they just never ever got over the hump. But they're starting to get there. I have that, again, if we had a crystal ball, we'd be millionaires here. But yeah, so you have Vancouver getting in, and I have Edmonton getting in. So we're pretty close again. The Central: Hurricanes, Blackhawks, Blue Jackets, Red Wings, Panthers, Stars, Predators, Lightning. Well, we obviously have a slam dunk in that division. I'll let you start with this one.
So, of course, we have to go Tampa Bay. I'll go Tampa Bay first. I'll go Dallas second. I go Columbus third, and then I go Chicago made the playoffs last year, right? Didn't they make the playoffs last year?
You know what? I'm trying. I'm drawing a
I'm
blank
pretty
on that.
sure. I think they did, and maybe they lost in the first
Yeah,
round.
they lost it. Yeah. You know what was hard with the playoffs? Because we had that
The play,
we had the playoffs and we had the
right,
seeding scenario. So we were so fixated on the Flyers seeding because they were in the playoffs
right.
that you blinked and you didn't realize that Montreal had a tough series to get to play us in the playoffs. Yeah, so yeah, I had my head in the sand for a little bit, so I'm drawing a blank on Chicago.
Lastly, oh, man, it's tough between. I think I'll go Chicago over Nashville just
All
because
right,
of Kane and Taves, the Brinket. I think I'll go Chicago over Nashville.
Kubalik too. He
Yeah,
was
he's
at
a good player too.
30 goals last year. He's a hell of he's a no name guy but he's again he reminds me of like Linus Sandin. Hopefully, he was a 25-year-old rookie last year for
Right.
them. So I have the Hurricanes, Stars, Predators, and of course the Lightning coming out. But the Stars, if Kudobin comes down to earth, because Ben Bishop's still injured for a while, then would you concur that they could easily not make the playoffs, and then someone like Columbus or Chicago in my scenario could take their spot?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So, but that's a division where you can definitely have a lot of flipping and flopping in when people give their evaluation of that division. And
Agreed.
finally, we have the West. We have Anaheim, Arizona, Colorado, Minnesota, the Kings, the Knights, the Sharks, and the Blues. I'll do this one. We had an alternating theme here. I like the Blues a lot. I love the Knights, the Avalanche, and the Wild are my teams from the West. Your thoughts?
I think I'm going to go with you on all of those.
Okay.
I'm going to go with you on all of those. I would agree.
Now,
I think that one was pretty simple, honestly.
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. There are some weaker teams in that division, and the Kings. The Kings remind me of like the West Coast version of the Blackhawks. Legendary teams are starting to get old in the tooth, but maybe they'll have that one last push before they do a complete rebuild.
Did you say the Kings or Chicago?
I said the Kings remind me of like a Chicago Blackhawks type
Okay.
team of the West. They're both formerly potent teams that are getting long in the tooth. So I think they're on the verge of a rebuild.
Gotcha.
Now, show one of hopefully many for us. Let's get on the record. Who do you have in your Cup Finals?
Tampa Bay versus Colorado.
All right. And I have Tampa Bay versus Vegas. Who do you have as the winning Cup?
This year, I'll go with Tampa Bay repeating, just because the Avs defensively and with their goalie, I don't think they're going to be able to score with Tampa Bay, but I just think that Tampa Bay is a more well-rounded team.
And I'm going to have to agree with you as well. I think Tampa Bay, in my scenario, takes it over Vegas. Again, Vegas to me would have been the ideal matchup in the previous Cup. They're a territorial team. So both those teams are territorial teams. That sounds like a weird thing to say, but they literally own the play in every game they have. So it'd be awesome to see those teams going up against each other. But I think Tampa Bay just has more firepower. And I think that ultimately puts them over the top. Injuries aside, Tampa Bay to me is a repeat Stanley Cup champion.
And think about it. Tampa Bay won it last year. Stamkos didn't play, did he?
I know. He hasn't really played in almost 2.5 years consistently. But Kucherov is missing the entire regular season. Are you aware of that?
I did not know that. No.
Yes. So they do not have Kucherov for the regular season.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. So, but hopefully they'll have Stamkos back to somehow neutralize that. But Kucherov is on another level because he's so well-rounded.
Yeah, I was going to say, as great as Stamkos is, I mean, Kucherov does everything.
Yeah. So that's huge. That's huge. But to me, they have the best defenseman in hockey in Victor Hedman. So they're just a great team that I think could, they might not roll, and if Kucherov is able to come back in the early stages of the playoffs, then hopefully, in their case, hopefully they'll be able to get their mojo back immediately. But again, they have such depth. I think they can weather that storm.
They
It's a
don't
big
have
storm, but they can weather it.
Yeah, they don't have to roll. All they have to do is get in. If they get him back,
You're right. You're
they're
right. You're right.
everybody.
Because experience means a lot, as you know, and they've got it. All right, we're in a transition. Part of Flyer and Ice is not only do we talk about the Flyers, and obviously the games haven't started, and if this was a week from now, we'll probably be talking about the Flyers' first game on Wednesday, because our shows are on Thursday, so we'll probably have a lot to say about the Wednesday game, hopefully a victory against Pittsburgh. But tonight, it was more of a forecasting type of deal. But one of the segments of our show is DFS, DraftKings lineups in particular. I'm going to give you my philosophy on building a DFS lineup for hockey. Now, it's funny, as much as a hockey guy as I am, I really didn't do much with DFS in years past because I've been such a football fanatic, and then gradually have gotten into basketball. And football, you just know a strategy. The strategies always change. Football, it's like it used to be draft a quarterback, got to have the wide receiver or tight end with the quarterback. And now one of the smartest guys in the industry, who happens to be a Heat Ratio Sports member, is Jason Sullivan. People, if you don't watch anything, watch any show that Jason Sullivan's on. He didn't come up with, but he does such research. He came up with football. A new strategy is you have the running back stacked with a receiver or tight end on a particular team. That's the kind of insight Jason brings to the table. And Tony last night on our fantasy brought up a brilliant scenario with basketball that I'm now going to use as my model, that you stack within your team with an inside guy and a guy in the paint. Brilliant strategy. I would have lineups that could literally have 9 different players on different teams. But now I'm going to go with Tony's philosophy of having multiple inside-outside stacks. Hockey. My opinion is you've got to build with the goaltender. When I would get free plays with DFS in the past, I would just plug in names that I knew were great goal scorers, and then goalie was the last guy I plugged in. But goalies in DFS, you get 6 points just for a victory. So boom, you get 6 points just for winning. And you lose 3.5 points every time they give up a goal. So you can't take goaltending lightly. So not only do you have to scrutinize the goalie, you have to almost guarantee your goalie gets a win. Now, the forwards, not so much. You just want them to produce points. Goalies, you got to pick a goalie that gets wins. So build around the goalie. Check the Vegas lines. Check injury reports. You've got to almost have a slam dunk win. If you're a big Carter Hart fan, he's been on fire, but you just think he's got a tough matchup, you can't play him. You got to go for the win. Another thing that I believe in with DFS is stacking at least from 2, maybe 3 teams. Ideally, top line players. Now, obviously, you can't stack the top line players. Like you can't stack Draisaitl and McDavid every game with Marnin and Austin Matthews, because they're going to be, you're going to have no money left over. So you got to find the number one line from a lower ranked team. Maybe you go with someone like Peterson with Miller from Vancouver, or Peterson with Besser. Maybe a lower ranked team who has that number one line upside. And finally, I also think if you cannot find the value beyond what I just referenced, like you get McDavid with Draisaitl and you just don't feel like you have the money to spend, try to find a stack on a team's first power play unit. And then finally, when you build your defenseman, you got to get a guy that at least averages 20 minutes of ice time, because defensemen will get their points you get block shot points in DFS with DraftKings. So, and a guy we talked about, Provorov, who's probably going to be undervalued for a while. He's not going to be John Carlson, Eric Carlson, Victor Hedman type salary, but I guarantee you Provorov's going to be a fantasy beast. Those are my philosophies on stacking a hockey lineup. And throughout the year, Vance and I will put our lineups on Twitter. If we're doing a show on Thursday, maybe we'll do a Friday lineup for DFS. Vance, I took up a lot of time. I apologize. Is there anything that you would like to add to that, or do you have your own philosophy on DFS lineups?
So Dan, I told you before, when it comes to DFS and hockey, I was a lost cause. So
all right. If you follow my advice, you will be a found cause.
Yeah, I'm a little afraid to play hockey as I'm more comfortable with basketball, but I'll give it a shot one of these days.
And truth be told, just because we are hockey experts, and believe me, Vance knows his stuff. You name a team in the Western Conference, he'll roll off 8 names right off the bat. Vance knows his hockey. Doesn't mean you have to be an expert DFS player.
Right.
So that's almost like just a fun aspect of being a sports fan. I'm starting to get into it, and Vance, I would, I'll try to hold your hand through it. Now,
I appreciate that, man.
Now, Vance, Vance and I are buddies. We're Twitter buddies, and he's an amazing props guy. So I do want you to do some digging though into NHL props. Can you do that for me?
For sure. Sounds good. That's easy for me.
Yeah. So look out for our props. And ladies and gentlemen, listen, we've had a blast. This was our first show. We dropped the puck for the first time tonight. We're going to bring it every week. And I've got a surprise for next week, or at least the following week. I haven't even shared this with Vance yet. I'm going to share with him off the show. We have a potential pretty good special guest next week, if not the following week. Listen, if you want to learn more information on DFS, hockey in general, reach out to both Vance. Our Twitter handles are DMG Teach, at DMG Teach, all lowercase, Teach Everything Sports, and Vance is at crew_love0. You got to love that name. At crew_love0. We are Heat Ratio Sports. We are growing. We are big. We are going to be the best in the business, if not already. So, for my buddy Vance Crew, I'm Dan Green. Have a terrific night. Good luck. Good hockey.